America looks untouchable on the surface. But what I saw in that dream was enough to bring the entire nation to its knees. Behind the glow of power and the endless pride that blinds millions, the truth I witnessed was cold enough to steal my breath. And what Jesus told me that night is something no one wants to hear, but everyone will have to face. He'll say it straight. What I saw in that dream could bring America to its knees. It wasn't war. It wasn't the economy. It wasn't any enemy outside our borders. It was something we've been feeding inside ourselves for years. I spent my whole life trusting what I could touch and see. But that night broke every rule I lived by. I couldn't sleep. The room was dark. The air conditioner hummed like it always does. Nothing strange. Nothing dramatic, until a thin line of light appeared at the end of the hallway. Not bright, not blinding, just a narrow crack, like a door was opening to some place I wasn't supposed to enter. I froze. I didn't act brave. I didn't move forward on purpose. Something was pulling me. Then he appeared. No thunder, no glowing sky, no shock wave, just a quiet presence that made every hair on my arms stand up. He looked at me, calm and steady, and said a sentence I can still hear as clearly as my own breath. The thing that will destroy America is already living inside its people, and I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. Every word, every moment. I remember the moment it began, and it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't holy. It wasn't the kind of scene you see in movies. It started with silence. The kind of silence that makes you aware of every sound in your own house, the refrigerator clicking on, the air conditioner pushing out a tired breath, my own footsteps on the wooden floor. I walked into the kitchen because I couldn't sleep. My mind was full, but not with anything special. Just the usual worries Americans carry around these days. News, noise, division, the feeling that the world is loud even when the room is quiet. I opened the cabinet, grabbed a glass, filled it with water, and stood there doing nothing, just breathing, just thinking. That's when I felt it, a shift. Small, but sharp enough to make me turn my head. The kind of shift you notice when someone enters a room even though you didn't hear a door open. I looked down the hallway. Everything was dark, except for a thin slice of light at the bottom of the door. It shouldn't have been there. I knew that. I had turned every light off before going to bed. I took one step forward, not because I wanted to, because something inside me leaned in before my body did. The air changed, slightly colder, slightly heavier, and for a second, I wondered if this was what fear felt like when it doesn't have a shape yet. I walked toward the light without thinking. The floor felt different under my feet, softer somehow. The hallway looked longer than it should, like the house had stretched while I wasn't watching. I stopped halfway. I didn't know why. Something in me said, "That's close enough." But the moment I stopped, the light moved. Not brighter, not wider. It just shifted, like someone on the other side had adjusted their stance. And that's when I realized I wasn't alone. My heartbeat slowed instead of speeding up. That surprised me. You'd expect panic. You'd expect confusion. But there was none of that. Only clarity. A strange clarity that felt almost unnatural, like something was quieting my thoughts so I could see what was happening. The hallway light flickered for half a second, and I heard a sound. Soft, barely there, like a slow breath being drawn in, the kind of breath you hear when someone is about to speak. I stood frozen. My hand slipped off the wall. I didn't dare blink. And then the fear came. Not the kind that makes you scream or run. The deeper kind. The kind that tells you your life is about to change, whether you're ready or not. I felt it rising in my chest, slow and heavy, as if something familiar was being peeled away from me. Then the thought hit me out of nowhere. You're not walking into something. Something is walking into you. The air pressed against my skin like a second weight. My throat tightened. The house felt smaller, like the walls were folding around the moment. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I waited. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it means to be drawn into something you cannot explain, cannot escape, and cannot pretend isn't happening. Everything changed in that hallway. And I had no idea what was waiting on the other side of that thin line of light. I stood in the hallway, staring at that thin line of light, waiting for something to make sense. Nothing did. Not the cold air. Not the stillness. Not the way time felt slower, like the house had slipped out of the world for a moment. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then the light shifted again, and I knew someone was on the other side. The door didn't open. The light didn't widen, but the presence stepped forward. I felt it before I saw it. A pressure in the air. A weight without sound. A calm that didn't belong to the night. I kept staring, and slowly, the shape of a man formed in the glow. No glare, no halo. Just a figure stepping out of the light like he had always been there, waiting for me to notice. He didn't look dramatic. He didn't look supernatural. He looked real, more real than anything in that hallway. His clothes were simple. His posture was quiet, but his eyes were the kind of eyes that see every version of you at once, who you are, who you pretend to be, who you're afraid you might become. He didn't speak right away. He just watched me, calm, steady, as if he was giving me time to understand what was happening. But understanding wasn't coming. My mind was racing, but the rest of me felt frozen. My hands were shaking. My throat was tight. I couldn't look away even if I wanted to. Then he took one slow step toward me. The floor didn't creak. The air didn't shift. Nothing around him reacted, but I did. My heart dropped, as if it knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. He stopped just far enough to make his silhouette clear, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of his presence, even in the cold hallway. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, not soft, just controlled. Every word felt like it had been chosen long before I ever existed. You know why I am here. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My voice was gone. My thoughts were scattered. I felt exposed, like the hallway lights were pointing straight into every corner of my life. He took another step, and for the first time I saw his face, clearly. Not in detail, not in perfection, just in truth, the kind of truth that doesn't need anything extra to be undeniable. You have seen the beginning, he said. Now you will see the cause. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. My chest felt tight. My hands felt numb. But he didn't need me to respond. He kept going. Your nation stands tall, he said, but it does not stand strong. The words hit harder than I expected. They were simple, but they carried weight, the kind of weight that makes you feel like the floor beneath you might not hold. He walked past me, slow and deliberate, and the hallway grew brighter as he moved. Not from the light behind him, but from something else. Something that felt old and familiar in a way I couldn't describe. Look, he said. It wasn't a command. It wasn't gentle. It was something in between, something that made it impossible to disobey. And when I turned my head toward the shifting light, I felt the truth pressing in before I even knew what I was about to see. Everything that came next began with that single word. Look, he told me to look, and the hallway dissolved. The walls, the lights, the floor, all of it faded like dust blown off a window pane. I wasn't floating. I wasn't dreaming. I was simply standing in a new place without ever taking a step. A wide, open view stretched out in front of me, like someone had lifted America and set it on a glass table under a harsh light. I saw cities first, Tall buildings, bright billboards, people moving fast. Everyone looked confident. Everyone looked sure of themselves. And then Jesus spoke. This is the surface. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't echo. It just settled into the scene like it belonged there. The image shifted. The bright lights dimmed. The buildings looked tired. The streets looked cold. People kept walking, but their faces changed. Jaw tight, eyes angry, shoulders stiff. Everyone pushing, everyone rushing, everyone demanding something. This is the truth underneath. I wanted to ask what I was looking at, but the question never made it to my lips. He already knew. Pride, he said. Not the kind that celebrates effort. Not the kind that honors growth. The kind that blinds. The view changed again. Families at dinner tables talking over each other. Neighbors arguing. Strangers yelling online. People treating opinions like weapons. People choosing noise over thought. People choosing conflict over compassion. Pride makes every man his own god, he said, and every nation its own idol. I felt a tightness in my chest, not fear, recognition. The scene zoomed out. I saw churches, big ones, small ones, some full, some nearly empty. Many looked alive on the outside. Music, lights, energy. But when the view shifted, I saw something else. The inside looked hollow. People were there, but their hearts weren't. Their focus wasn't. They worship comfort, he said. They worship control. They worship the mirror. The next image hit harder. I saw leaders, political, social, cultural, speaking into microphones. Some spoke with passion, some with anger, some with charm. But behind them, like shadows stretching from their feet, was something darker. The hunger to be right, to be praised, to be untouchable. Pride grows fastest, where applause never stops. The scene sharpened. I saw ordinary people now. A mother ignoring her child. A man judging a stranger. Someone refusing to admit they were wrong. Someone refusing to forgive. Someone refusing to listen. Small things, everyday things, but repeated so many times they became a storm. This is the one thing, he said, the root of collapse, the seed of every downfall. The view darkened. The streets shook. Not physically, morally. Like the ground of the nation was cracking from pressure everyone felt, but no one wanted to name. When a nation refuses humility, he said, it becomes impossible to guide, impossible to heal, impossible to save from itself. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say America was strong, that we were resilient, that we always came back. But the image didn't lie. The strength looked like armor. The resilience looked like stubbornness. The unity looked like a memory. America will not fall because of enemies, he said quietly. It will fall because pride finally demands payment. The vision began to fade. The light thinned. The room grew closer again. And before everything vanished, he spoke one last line. Let a nation kneel by choice, or it will kneel by consequence. The vision didn't fade gently. It snapped, like a cord pulled too tight and finally breaking. One moment I was watching the nation from above, and the next I was back in the hallway. But my legs felt weak. My breath came out uneven. My hands shook like they didn't belong to me. I pressed my back to the wall because it was the only thing that felt solid. Everything I saw kept replaying in my head. The pride, the anger, the coldness in people's eyes, the hollow places where love used to be. It wasn't just a national problem. It wasn't just politics or culture or noise. It was personal. Every scene I watched felt like a mirror being held up to my own life. That was the moment it hit me. Hard and fast. I was part of the problem. Not in some dramatic way. Not in a headline way. in the quiet ways that matter more, the pride that hides behind good intentions, the stubbornness that looks harmless until you see what it destroys, the refusal to listen, the need to be right, the little moments where you choose your ego over kindness. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. My chest tightened, my throat burned. I didn't cry at first. I just sat there, stunned, trying to breathe through a truth I didn't want but couldn't deny. Then the tears came. Slow at first, then harder. Not from fear, from recognition. It's one thing to see the flaws of a nation. It's another to see your own soul cracking in the same pattern. I covered my face with my hands. My voice broke when I tried to speak. I wasn't talking to him. I wasn't talking to myself. I was talking to the weight inside me. How did we get here? And the question wasn't about America. It was about me. I saw moments from my life flash across my mind. Times I ignored someone because I was too busy. Times I dismissed someone because I thought I knew better. Times I let pride lead the conversation. Times I shut the door on people who needed me. None of it looked evil, but it all looked familiar. Too familiar. Jesus didn't speak at first. He didn't rush in to comfort me. He didn't tell me it was okay. He let me feel it. All of it. The guilt, the heaviness, the cracks forming under the weight of my own heart. And strangely, that silence hurt more than any words could. When he finally stepped forward, his presence settled the air. Not soft, not harsh, just steady. Like a hand that doesn't have to touch you to hold you in place. You cannot heal what you refuse to see, he said. The sentence hit like a blow. Clean, direct, unavoidable. I didn't know, I whispered. Yes, he said, you did. You just didn't want to face it. I broke again, not loudly, not violently, just honestly. My shoulders shook. My breath came out in pieces. The weight inside me cracked open, and for the first time, I felt the depth of the emptiness I'd been carrying for years. He knelt beside me, not above me, not beyond me, just beside me. This is where change begins, he said. Not in strength, in surrender. The hallway felt quiet again. But this time, the silence didn't hide anything. It exposed everything. I stayed on the floor for a long moment, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't move. My mind was heavy. My chest was tight. Everything I thought I understood about myself and the world felt thinner than paper. Jesus didn't rush me. He didn't push me. He let the truth settle the way dust settles after a long storm. When I finally lifted my head, he spoke again. Now you see the wound, he said, but you must understand the cure. His voice was calm, but there was weight in it, the kind of weight that makes you listen, whether you want to or not. The fall of a nation begins in the hearts of its people, he said. So does its healing. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He kept going. Pride breaks everything it touches, he said. It breaks families. It breaks communities. It breaks nations. And it always breaks the one who carries it. The words were simple, but they cut deep because I knew how true they were. It'd seen pride take friendships, careers, marriages, and turn them into ashes. It'd seen people cling to being right even when it cost them everything. It'd done it myself. But humility, he said, is the beginning of strength. He paused, let it sink in. Humility is not weakness, he said. It is the courage to see yourself clearly. It is the strength to admit you are wrong. It is the wisdom to listen before you speak. It is the grace to see others as human, not obstacles. The scenes from earlier returned. The arguing, the shouting, the coldness, the obsession with being right, the hunger for control, the endless need to win. This is why your nation is breaking, he said. not from enemies, from the absence of humility. The words were quiet, but they felt like thunder rolling under the floor. I swallowed hard. My voice cracked when I asked, "What can we do?" His answer was simple. "Choose love over ego," he said. "Choose truth over comfort. Choose to listen. Choose to forgive. Choose to serve. A nation rises when its people kneel to compassion." He stepped back slightly, giving me space to breathe. "The loudest voices will tell you power comes from pride," he said. "But pride only destroys. Real power comes from surrender. Real freedom comes from honesty. Real change begins when someone says, 'I was wrong.'" I felt another wave of emotion hit me. Not fear this time. Something quieter, something cleaner. Like the weight inside me had cracked open, just enough for light to get in. He continued, "America does not need perfection," he said. "It needs humility. It needs tenderness. It needs people willing to see the pain in others instead of the flaws." Another pause. "And this begins with you. Not the nation, not the crowd, not the leaders. Me." It wasn't an accusation. It was an invitation. A call to choose something different from the noise and the anger and the pride that had taken root everywhere, even in me. I took a slow breath. For the first time since the vision began, I felt the ground under me again, solid, real. "This is the lesson," he said. "A nation falls through pride, but it rises through humility." He looked at me one last time. "Remember this." And the hallway grew still. When the hallway finally stopped, spinning in my mind, I realized he was gone. Not slowly, not dramatically. Just gone. The air felt normal again. The light faded back into darkness. The house looked the same, but nothing in me was the same. I stayed there for a moment, letting my breath steady, trying to understand what had just happened. I stood up slowly. My legs were stiff, like I'd been sitting for hours. I walked to the kitchen, turned on the light, and stared at the counter. Everything was exactly where I left it, but it felt different, as if the world had shifted a few inches and nothing lined up the way it used to. I poured a glass of water and held it with both hands. My reflection in the window looked older, but not in a bad way. Older in the way a person looks when they finally stop pretending they have all the answers. I took a sip, and for the first time, the water tasted honest, simple, clean. I walked outside. The air was cool. The sky was dark but calm. The street was empty. I heard the wind brushing against the trees. Nothing special, but it felt like the world was speaking in a softer voice. A voice I had ignored for a long time. I sat on the porch steps. Something inside me had cracked open, but not in a painful way, in a clear way. I saw things differently. The houses on my street, the people I argued with, the strangers I judged, the moments I wasted trying to prove I was right. It all came back, but it didn't hurt the same way. It felt like a map showing where I went wrong. I realized something simple. I wasn't supposed to save the nation. I was supposed to change myself, not with big speeches, not with big actions, with small, honest choices. Listening more, arguing less, slowing down, noticing people, seeing pain instead of flaws, seeing humanity instead of enemies. I thought about the pride he showed me, the silent kind, the kind that sneaks into everyday moments, the kind I carried without knowing. And I made a quiet decision. No fireworks, no vow, just a decision sitting right in my chest. I would not live that way anymore. It started small. I sent a message to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone ID pushed away. I apologized, not with conditions, not with explanations, just truth. Then I called a family member I had argued with. I didn't bring up the past. I didn't try to win anything. I just listened. The more I changed, the lighter I felt. Not instantly, not magically, but gradually, like something heavy was finally being set down. I noticed people more, their tired eyes, their quiet worries, their guarded hearts. And every time I felt the old pride rising, I remembered his words. Real power comes from surrender. One afternoon, I held the door for a stranger, something I'd done 1,000 times. But this time, I didn't do it out of habit. I did it with intention. And the stranger looked at me with a kind of surprise I didn't expect. A soft thank you, a small smile, a moment of simple connection. It was nothing, but it was everything. That's when I understood the shift. Transformation isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It starts in the smallest choices, and it spreads. I wasn't the same person who walked down that hallway. And I knew I never would be again. When everything was over, I sat alone in my living room. No voices, no visions, no bright hallway waiting to pull me in again. Just the quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat. I looked around the room and felt like I was seeing my life from the outside. Every choice, every moment, every small path that led me to that night. I thought about what he showed me. The pride, the anger, the noise, the distance between people who should love each other, the coldness we pretend not to notice. I felt it all again, but softer this time, not as a burden, as a reminder. What surprised me most was how simple the truth really was. Not dramatic, not hidden, just ignored. We don't fall because the world is evil. We fall because we stop looking at ourselves with honesty. We fall because we cling to our own importance and forget the weight of our responsibility to one another. And I realized that the vision wasn't meant to scare me. It was meant to wake me up, to show me how easily a nation can lose its way when its people refuse to bend, refuse to listen, refuse to see their part in the story. And in that quiet room, I knew one thing. Change begins in silence, long before it shows in the world. So this is the truth I carry now. Not a warning, not a prophecy, a simple fact. The thing that will bring America to its knees is already inside us. It lives in our pride. It grows in our silence. It spreads every time we choose ourselves over each other. But there is another path. A nation can kneel by fear, or it can kneel by choice. It can break under its own weight, or it can rise through humility. The future depends on which we choose. And if you are still listening now, maybe this message was meant for you. Maybe you feel the same shift I felt that night. Maybe something in you knows that pride has stolen enough from us already. And maybe, just maybe, this is the moment you decide to see.